Hey, welcome everybody to the November iteration of the Partner Webinar Series. We actually started just a tad early, so certainly here for you once we kick things off. We still do have people pouring in, but all that said, we'll get started here in just a minute. Meantime, for those of you who don't know Murph Krajewski, he's with us today on the broadcast, and he'll be talking through the agent experience and really what that is in terms of a foundational phrase for Sharpen as a brand. So again, thanks for joining. We'll get started here in just a minute. All right, so we are now at the top of the hour. So again, welcome everybody. It looks like we still have folks flooding in, but nevertheless, I'll talk through my fun piece before I toss it over to Murph, who's got the real meat of the presentation. But again, thanks for everyone joining the webinar. Just a few housekeeping items. The December webinar that may or may not happen. It just kind of depends on the topic and also how many folks are going to be in the office for the tail end of that month. I know it's certainly a slow month, but more information to come out on that one as we get closer. But again, as far as today's presentation goes, that's the more important thing. As far as today's prezo, do remember that stick around to the end. Make sure you do stick around to the bitter end. We will be doing a drawing for an Amazon gift card. Must be present to win for that. So we'll go ahead and draw a name about 10 minutes into the presentation, and as long as you're there at the tail end, you could be a winner. As far as other items of conversation, again, Murph Krajewski is our presenter today. He's going to be presenting on the agent first experience. As far as a follow-up, we will be sending out a recording of this presentation to everybody who attended, and any other questions you guys may have, please funnel those into the question pane. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, or even further, if there are any things that you think of after the fact, by all means, feel free to send those over to partners@sharpencx.com. So without further ado, I'll hand this over to Murph and let him guide you guys from here.
Hey everybody, thanks Rich. My name is Murph Krajewski. Krajewski is horribly complicated, so Murph is fine. I've been with Sharpen since before it was Sharpen, actually. I joined in April. My start date is actually April 1st of 2016. So jury's still out on whether the joke was on me or them, but whatever, we're going with it. Yeah, so I had come from Interactive Intelligence. I'd been there for about 16 years, left there as a creative director, and bumped into these guys in town here in Indianapolis, and we just got to talking one night about what a next gen contact center platform could be. And we'd kind of waxed poetic a little bit on what it would look like to be a contact center with a heart, or a contact center vendor with a heart. Somebody who cared about people and made sure that agents were well cared for. And the reason for that is agents that are well cared for, number one, perform better, but number two, they stick around longer. And back in those days, the main problem we talked about solving was agent attrition, which is, if you've spent 20 minutes in the contact center space, agent attrition is off the charts. It's historically bad, and it's been so bad for so long that most places have stopped trying to solve it. They just account for it as a cost of doing business, which feels silly to me. If your contact center has 50% attrition, which is pretty darn good, you're turning over half your staff every year, and that means you're always onboarding, you're always training, And sometimes, contact center attrition gets up over 100%, which means you're just constantly struggling and never keeping up. So that agent attrition problem was one that we really, really wanted to focus on. And, over the years, we attacked it and we tried to quantify what the agent experience might look like if we put it into numbers. We developed what we call the agent experience score. And, we've kind of put that on the back burner for like this year while we're working on a couple of other metrics related tools, but that agent experience score is actually going to come back around and be more real than it was even before. So all of that is to say, agent first to us is somebody's sending me Slack messages. Rich, if that's you, I can't see them because I'm in presenter mode. So just take your mic off and don't be subtle.
It is not me, but I will make
Okay.
one subtle observation. You mentioned April 1st. That is a great day for both of us. Then, if you started here, then the day of my birth is another great signification of that
Get out of
particular
here.
month.
You were born on April Fool's Day? The
As
best.
unfortunate as it may be, yes.
That's the joke's on all of us. I love that. So anyways, Agent First was born in the spirit of solving agent attrition. We've since, like, the further we get into it, the more and more benefit we're seeing from it. Coincidentally, around that same time in the industry, some of the bigger vendors have started picking up on agent experience, and we're a little bummed that it's become kind of a buzzword. Because we're actually we're oriented towards solving agent experience. And we kind of feel like others are just sort of like making social media posts out of it and that, whatever. But we figured that'll die out and we'll keep going and they'll move on to the next buzzword eventually. So the slide deck that I'm going to use today is one that Adam Settle, our VP of product, who many of you have probably met or heard before. He's spoken quite a bit to the Telarus community. But Adam and I talked a little bit about coaching the coaches and agent experience and what that means at the recent ICMI Expo show that happened just a month or two ago. And so actually, I thought I would just use that because it's a good framework to kind of walk through the philosophy of it. And if you came here today looking for a demo, you're going to see one product screenshot and it's a close-up of a certain part of it. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to kind of get into the zen of agent experience and just the benefits that come from it and why we do things the way that we do. So there's a good statement that our chief data scientist, Ritch Caudill, likes to attribute to me, but it's actually his. And it's this, that a happy employee is one who knows they're performing well and knows that others know it too. And while it's not poetry and it doesn't roll off the tongue, it's very true. So I'm going to kind of break this down into three different segments. We'll talk about what a happy employee is and why that's important. We'll talk about how to get them and keep them performing well. And then we'll talk about the benefit that happens when they realize that they're not just doing that quietly behind the scenes, sort of laboring away in silence. So let's just start with we'll start with the first part, a happy employee. In our terms, we're talking about contact center agents, but actually, the more we get into this thing, hang on, if you guys excuse me just a second, I'm going to try to shut down Slack because somebody's just going at it with my computer here, and it looks like I'm not going to be able to gracefully do it. And never mind. Okay. So, yeah, a happy agent in a contact center it's a tricky thing to find because a contact center agent's job is really, really hard. And they're constantly working with customers who are pre-angered because nobody calls the 800 number when they're happy. They only call when they're upset. So you're just in this treadmill cycle of dealing with one unhappy person, hopefully fixing something for them, moving on to the next unhappy person, and around and around and around. So the hard part about that is traditionally we have treated contact center agents kind of like a sweatshop or like a boiler room, where you get in there and you just grind and grind and grind. And when you're done, when we can't chew you up anymore, we just spit you out and we bring in the next person and we grind through them. And that's really, I believe, what happens when you don't take an agent first approach, when in fact you take a, I don't know, like a metrics first approach or just a straight bottom line approach. And what happens with that is that customers can feel that unhappiness from agents. There's a stat out there that says 90% of customers will agree that their experience is directly tied to their perception of the agent's experience, which means if you call an 800 number and somebody picks up the phone and goes, yeah, what do you want? You're going to have a bad time because they're having a bad time. The other day, we're in quarantine, so my wife and I bought one of those mirror workout things from Lululemon. We ordered it, we got it in. We actually bought it under some false pretenses. I thought she wanted it, she thought I wanted it, and we were both wrong. So we were like, well, let's get them, we'll let them set it up, we'll try it, we'll see how it goes. We got it in here. The only place in our house where it was really graceful to put it is kind of in a corner. And you can't really tell this from a shoulders up webcam shot. I'm 6'4", I'm about 225. I'm a big dude. So I'm in this corner trying to do like some mirror workout moves, and I'm like, this is not going to work. So I called their number, I called their 800 number, and a nice guy named Jonathan picks up the phone, and we're chatting, and he's like, you know, he's doing his process work. And while he's doing that, he stops. He's like, how you doing today? And I was like, well, I'm doing all right, you know, thanks for asking. And then I said, you know, being in the business I'm in, I said, it sounds like you're working from home. He was like, yeah, I'm in New York City. You know, things are going okay. And so we got to just, you know, chit-chatting a little bit, bantering. But I could tell that Jonathan was in a good place. And that put me in a good place. And my experience was great. And they're going to come and pick up the mirror and give us a refund and everything's cool. So that's just a really stark contrast, I'm sure, from customer experiences that each of you have probably had when you've had to call an 800 number. I mean, maybe today or yesterday even, like we do it all the time. So the trick here is when Jonathan is in a good place, I would bet all the money in my pockets, which I'm wearing sweatpants right now, so that's not a lot of money, but I would bet a good amount of money that Jonathan is not thinking about quitting his job, because he feels like he's doing it well and he feels like he's accomplishing something and he's okay, right? So he's going to keep doing that job. Now, if we ever get to that point where Jonathan is under too much stress and he's not able to help customers and he just feels like it's an endless slog with no relief in sight, he's going to bounce. You know, as soon as Arby's has a job fair, he's gone. And then they're off to like recruiting and hiring and training and onboarding and all that garbage again. Now, the other downside of that is that this all of that cycle creates a bad customer experience for me. So if they give me a customer satisfaction survey, I'm going to answer it pretty low. If you go to, there's a website out there called theacsi.org, theacsi.org. Maybe it's .com now that I say it out loud, but that stands for the American Customer Satisfaction Index. And what they do is they poll across industries in the US customer satisfaction scores and how businesses are doing. So they also provide an aggregate score that shows how all businesses across all industries are tracking for customer satisfaction. They started this in the mid 90s, I think around 95, 96, and they do it, it's current, you can go and check. I think they update it quarterly. That line, when you look at the graph on the website, it's pretty up and down jagged. But if you look at the, hopefully I'm pointing at the right side of the screen with my camera. If you look at the legend on the left side of it, it's because they're very focused in on a section of the numbers. So I took that data and I put it on a 0 to 100, and it's basically a flat line. So customer satisfaction scores have not risen or dropped significantly in more than 20 years, which means that the way we're doing customer service now is not working, or it is working and customers are absolutely as happy as they can be. Like 75, 76% is as happy as we can be. Speaking as a customer, I don't buy that because I could be a lot happier than 75% happy. So that leads us to believe that there's just something fundamentally wrong with how we're doing it. And we believe that if you improve the agent experience, they're going to stick around longer, which means they're going to get better at their jobs over time. And that means that they're going to provide a better experience for your customers. So the end result of all that is the Zen philosophy that customer satisfaction is not a thing you can like put your shoulder to and push forward. this is not a joke. I was just on a webinar, like I left it to come here with a group of consultants that we're engaging with, and we did a poll and we asked them, you know, what metrics are your clients interested in? And we asked them things like average handle time, first contact resolution, wrap up time, then agent attrition and customer satisfaction. And 70% said customer satisfaction. And then somewhere in the like lower 25 and 30% were those three other stats that I mentioned: handle time, first contact resolution, et cetera. So that's upside down, right? By focusing on those other metrics and making sure that your agents are able to hit their goals, customer satisfaction is naturally going to rise. Customer satisfaction is like the headache. It's not the cause of the pain, it's just the pain that you feel. And a headache could be caused by, I don't know, 20 different things. It's hard to run that symptom down, but that's customer satisfaction. So if you focus on the root problems that are stressing out your agents, your customer satisfaction is going to take care of itself. We actually have graphs to show that too. We're proving it out with our customers. So that's why we believe that happy agents are important, and there's a lot of benefits to be had by that. And though companies don't necessarily know to shop for it yet, our job is to help them realize that that's actually what they want while they're looking for higher CSAT scores. Okay, so that's happy employees. So a happy employee is one who knows that they're performing well. Also on this webinar, there's a consultant out there called Cheryl Helm, who is amazing, and she actually has a background in education, and she's super data driven, really numbers focused. We've done several projects with her in terms of like webinars and content and things. But if you don't know Cheryl Helm, you should look her up. She's really smart. She dropped a quote in this past webinar, and I wrote it down because I knew I was talking to you all and I wanted to share it. So we were talking about how agents that are using our platform, like the managers and supervisors, will come back when we check in and they'll say, yeah, our agents really are enjoying it. They seem happy. And she broke into that part of that presentation and she said, well, they're happy because you're showing them data. And it's really, it feels like a strange kind of deal in a metrics driven contact center environment where it seems like data is the stick more than the carrot. But if you think about it, really all of us just want to do a good job, right? We all want to approach our jobs with a degree of excellence. We want to feel like we're making some progress. So there's a couple of key components to that. Yeah, amen. Come on, I'll preach all day. So there are a couple key components to that. Number one, an agent needs to know the target that they're aiming for, right? They have to have goals. One of our favorite customer stories is that there was a customer service manager who was bringing in an underperforming agent. He was going to put him on a performance plan, show him the door. That was it. It was time to turn him over. And the guy was like, well, why am I bouncing? What's so wrong? And the guy said, well, here, looking at your metrics, you're way underperforming compared to those on your team. And the guy was like, well, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was important. I'll go do better. And so he just like got up and left, didn't give the guy a chance to fire him. He just got up and went back to his desk and nailed it, right? So he just knew what he had to start paying attention to. And naturally, his numbers started to go up, right? It's the same for any of us. So the second part of that we believe is really important is that aside from knowing what the goal is, agents need to know how they're performing against that goal at any given time. They need to know if they're on track, if they're overperforming, if they're underperforming. It's almost like celestial navigation. You need some way to triangulate where you fall in the scope of doing your job. And so that's one thing that we do with what we call performance tiles, where we surface 3 key metrics that the customer service managers would choose, right? So an organization can choose 3 out of, I think our list right now is 7 different possible metrics. That's just the first initial rollout. We're growing those and we're getting feedback from the customers who are using it now of what other metrics they'd like us to bake in. So that list is growing. But the reason we do 3, this actually isn't the reason they chose 3, but one of my favorite mantras that supports it is, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have no priorities. It's basically just stay focused on the things that you really want agents to focus on, and all of those metrics are agent influenceable. Affectable, is that a better word? Influenceable is hard to say. If you want those numbers to be something that the agent actually has control of. So you're not going to measure me on what temperature it is outside, because that's nothing to do with me. And if you hold me accountable for every day under 70 degrees, like I'm going to lose that bet. So why would I stay in this job, right? I have to have a feeling of control and influence and all that. And yes, the tools in order to perform the job, I'm getting to that. Hold tight. So aside from that, one more thing is that there needs to be coaching and follow-up regularly on those metrics. So traditionally, contact center managers will take those metrics, and if an agent's not hitting the numbers they want them to, we'll just beat them down with those metrics, right? Like, you're not hitting it, performance plan, you're out. Next, performance plan, you're out. And we're just churning through people. And the thing we got to stop and remember is we're churning through people. Like, these are people. That's somebody's job that we may be unfairly or prematurely severing because they're not hitting an arbitrary metric that they don't have any control over anyways, and that we haven't given them the tools to do correctly, right? So we're trying to stop that cycle and get it so that, number one, agents have know-how of they have knowledge of their goals. They have the tools and the insight to do the job and know if they're doing the job. And then they're getting follow-up. And the key thing about this follow-up, actually in that previous webinar I was just talking about, that same metrics-based consultant was telling us that cycle actually proves the benefit and the need for good coaching. Whereas some people, like some clients you all might run into, look at that and think, oh, well, if I've got these performance tiles, I can fire my coaches and we'll just let the machines do it all. That's not at all accurate. And I'm not saying that, and please don't think that way. What these metrics provide is a means of conversation, right? So a manager or a supervisor can look at an agent's metrics over time and spot a trend and say, well, here, let me show you a screenshot of it. So these are our performance tiles here. There's a bunch of text and stuff on the left and at the bottom, but the pretty picture here is what I'm going to talk about. So if average wrap-up time, that yellow one in the middle, is 11 seconds, and my goal is at or below 20 seconds. So right now, I'm killing it, right? But I'm 4th of 5 on my team. So I can see that others are even doing a little bit better. So if I'm a supervisor and I'm watching that person and their wrap-up time starts to maybe go up a little bit over like a week or 2 weeks, I can look at that metric, and now I've got a coaching conversation like pre-made. Hey, tell me about this. Why do you think this number's going up? It should be going down. How can you affect that, right? Just let them know that somebody is paying attention to those metrics on the other side because it's important. So there's another dynamic there that I want to get into it. And this is where we kind of bleed into that third part of the sentence where we know that others know it too. The other day I was driving through a small town, and that small town had one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're like a radar. It's like a robotic speed trap, maybe is a good name for it. It's a display that says your speed is, and then there's numbers, and there's a little radar gun underneath it. And when you drive by it, it clocks you and puts your speed up on the thing. So I'm driving through town, and I'm not typically a guy to speed. I usually go 5 miles over the speed limit. And so it showed me my speed up there, and I looked and I was like, oh, I had that moment of like, somebody's watching, right? So I checked my speed, and I was okay. So I didn't have to adjust anything. I just kept going. But I checked because I knew that it was important. Now, if I drive by that sign speeding and nothing happens, then the next time I go through it, I'm going to speed again. And if nothing happens, I'm going to do it again. And 3, 5, 10 times, I'm going to start to think that thing's not hooked up to anything. There's no Wi-Fi in there. There's no radio calling a cop saying, hey, this guy's speeding, right? It's meaningless. So it's important that I see how I'm doing, how I'm performing. It's important that I know I have control over how I'm performing, but it's even more important that I know someone else cares, Because if there's no meaning behind that, if there's no follow-up, if there's no coaching, then I'm just going to ignore it and I'm going to blow through that speed limit doing whatever I want to do. So that's why agents need to know that the work that they're doing means something. And here's where I come back to kind of the top of the conversation, where we were saying that the job of an agent is difficult because they're slogging through unhappy customers day after day after day. I mean, that's really tough. Like sometimes scrolling through a Facebook feed right now is hard, where you just read people griping about whatever. I mean, it brings you down. And so if you're hearing that come at you, and some of that anger is misdirected at you as an agent, you didn't cause this person's problem, but they're coming at you because you're the voice on the other end of the line. That rests on the psyche, right? And that takes an emotional toll. So let's just say your job, I bring you in, I say, hey, welcome, you're a new employee. Your job is to stand in this, knee-deep room of water, and here's a bucket, and your job is to take that bucket and fill it up and put the full bucket on this conveyor belt that's going to take it to another room. That's your job. Ready, set, go. So you start filling up buckets and you're putting them on the conveyor belt. You fill up a bucket, you put it on the conveyor belt. Your back starts to hurt a little bit. So maybe if you just kind of take a quicker scoop, a little bit less water, it's less heavy, you put that on the conveyor belt, you're doing okay. Supervisor comes back in, he's like, hey, you're not filling the buckets hard enough or heavy enough. Like, get more water per bucket, go. Walks away. All right, fine. So now I'm filling buckets, and they're heavier and my back's hurting. So I'm going slow because it takes more time to do that, but I'm filling the bucket. Guy comes back, he's like, okay, you're not filling them fast enough, go faster, ready, set, go, leaves again. Right? So there's just a lot of mystery of why am I doing this? How is this working? New manager comes in, says, hey, I really appreciate you're working hard. I see you're getting good full buckets. We could use you going a little bit faster because that conveyor belt is going out the building to the fire station where we're filling up trucks and they're putting out people's houses that are on fire. So now that arduous, tedious, meaningless work has a great deal of importance put on it. Right? So just by knowing where that conveyor belt goes now, the whole process of my filling up buckets changes. It's the same thing with agents. So if I'm slogging through rough phone calls one after another, like that hurts to do the job. But if I know that there's something larger attached to it, if I know that company has a mission, if I know there's something that I'm serving by shouldering this, then it becomes more of like a sacrifice, or there's a nobility to it. And not to make everybody's job a super fun game or a poem or whatever, but it is to say that agents are human beings. We're all just human beings, and we need to know that there's something deeper beyond pick up that phone call, handle the problem as fast as possible, disconnect them, get to the next one. And I don't care how it feels, and I don't care how you like it, you're going to do it or you're gone. Like, that's just no way to live. So what we're finding is that when companies reorient their thinking a little bit, and honestly, the companies really don't have to reorient that much. This is what we're doing as vendors, right? We're surfacing these tools so that companies can just work differently by working with us. We take a really, really invested approach. We call it high touch partnership. You may have seen that on a slide somewhere. Actually, you should have seen that on a slide somewhere. If not, Rich, we have to have a conversation. Kidding. So yeah, we call it a high touch partnership. And what we do is we come in like right away, almost in the sales phase, where we get involved. We find out what metrics are most important to your business and why. And then we'll even recommend, like, maybe you think that's important, but if your end goal is this, maybe you should try these metrics, and we're seeing good involvement. So we get really involved in the metrics and the operations of how your clients are running their businesses. Then we make sure that we are orienting the implementation to hit those goals. And then we have a CSM team that stays engaged for the life of that contract and proactively watches to make sure that we're hitting those goals. And if we hit those goals, then we're going to set new goals, and we'll make sure we're oriented towards hitting those. And that's the main difference. A lot of the places that are selling contact center software these days are just turnkey, man. They're turn and burn. And there's a reason for that. So if you look at the Magic Quadrant for this year for CCaaS vendors. We're not on it. Don't panic. We don't have enough revenue to be on it yet. But you'll notice that some of the larger players are starting to fade to the left and drop out of the Magic Quadrant. The reason for that is that those companies are now over 20 years old. And even though they're cloud-based companies where they have cloud products, they are 20 years old and they're operating with old methodologies. And if you think about it, like what are some of the changes that have happened in the last 20 years? So that would be since 2000, right? The iPhone has come out, internet has become much more widely available. Like we're all living life online. We're all living omni-channel lives and we have omni-channel expectations. And those 20-year-old platforms were built in such a way that was satisfying the needs of a world that didn't have those requirements. So that's one of the things that Sharpen brings to the table is that we're built for a modern world, but we're also built for that human orientation, that human component. So yeah, I mean, that's just basically agent first comes from all of that. Now, I've been talking for a while. I see a couple of questions popping up. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to take a sip of water and I'm going to read some of those questions. Is that cool? Rich, do you have anything you want to throw in?
No, absolutely, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, here's that amen I got from Chirico. Hey, good to see you. Need the tools in order to perform your job. Yep, absolutely. Oh yeah, when you spoke with Ritch Caudill recently, we chatted about active contact resolution. Can we touch on that today? Yeah, I'll touch on it. And I'm just gonna, this is being recorded, and so I'm gonna say it for a disclaimer. I'm not gonna do it justice because this is Rick's baby. But first contact resolution is not really controllable by an agent. So if you think about the way that first contact resolution plays out, an angry customer calls a contact center and, you know, this is my problem, get it fixed, get it fixed, get it fixed. If the first agent that touches that call can't fix it, then the customer goes away, the agent goes away, the customer is going to come back and they might get a different agent, right? So they're going to give the same problem to them. That agent is going to approach it for the first time. Maybe they can look back through a historical record. PS, you can with Sharpen. But for the, you know, this is the agent's now first time touching that call. So first contact resolution is really more of a team metric. Can the team solve it with whoever touches it the first time? So what Rick did is he was like, you know, that doesn't feel agent controllable. So we need to measure it in such a way that the first time a particular agent touches an issue, that's the active contact. So we measure it in, I want to say 3, 5, and 7 day timescales. So customer calls in, gets in touch with an agent, tells them the problem. If the agent thinks they solved it and the customer thinks they solved it and they go away, if that customer calls back for the same issue within 3, 5, or 7 days, that active call was not resolved. And so the agent then does not get credit for that resolution. I hope that makes sense. I mean, that was kind of like the romper room level explanation.
Hey, I thought it made perfect sense. I thought you did.
Good. Whenever Rick like waxes poetic on metrics, I try really hard to grab it, but man, like he's so smart. It's hard to sometimes turn his stuff into stories. So yeah, that's what we mean by active contact resolution. And frankly, I don't know of anybody else that's measuring it that way or really honestly caring to measure it that way. So we're pretty proud of it, and we're expecting it to catch on pretty well with what I'll call forward-thinking businesses. Cool, thanks, Hal. Sounds like I got it. Okay, so someone, Mary chimed in, very true, Sharpen goes above and beyond to deliver. Aw, Mary, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you. What are the available contract lengths? Rich, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So if the question is in regard to customer contract lengths, I mean, our standard contract in general is an annual contract. Now that being said, we've certainly had customers approach us and say, can we do quarterly? Can we do monthly? Very flexible when it comes to all of those things. But But lo and behold, if we get in front of a customer and we start talking about pricing and all that, the very standard pricing that we put forth and all they get right there out of the gate is based on a 1-year agreement.
And it's
And
all on our
frankly,
website too.
yeah, and just to add to that too, I would say that that is one thing that if you rewind, Murph and I both have a legacy interactive intelligence background. We were signing 5-year hosted cloud contracts, and customers at the time, yeah, sure, it was is something they wanted to lock in price, but customers have been clamoring for these shorter term contracts, and yeah, you ask why only a 1 year? Well, we're so convinced and confident in what we have to offer that okay, yeah, you sign a 1-year agreement, auto renew. Lo and behold, we've got a customer for at least the foreseeable future. There's really no reason for us to lock that customer into something that they don't feel comfortable with.
Well, and that, I mean, I didn't even touch on the ROI guarantee. Did you want to, should I go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's something we've been pushing out there a lot, but by all means, if you want to give your spin on it, go for it. It's something that is a huge differentiator as
Yeah.
Hal had pointed out, just in terms of active contact resolution. That is yet just another thing that I think the market is in love with, is
Yeah.
our.
So this is actually a thing I pushed back against when we first started talking about it. Our CEO is Bill Gilday, and that dude is like rocket scientist smart. He's so smart. So he and Rick were, looking at the metrics and seeing what we're pulling out of these performance tiles, and like the results are really staggering in some cases. Like you look at them and it's kind of unbelievable. One of our biggest customers, in fact, our biggest customer is a payment card, like a gift card processor. They've got upwards of 1,000 agents running at any given time. Over the course of the year, since they turned on performance tiles, they've seen a 12% increase in some of their efficiency metrics. 12%. Like in contact centers, you guys who have been here for a while, 1% is a big deal. So he called us and he was really excited about it. And we actually, he and I did a session about it at that ICMI show as well. And if you go to our YouTube channel, if you go to youtube.com and search for Sharpen Technologies, look for a video with me and a guy named Pedro Reyes, and we explore that benefit gain. So we've seen enough of those gains with enough companies that we are comfortable to say within 60 days. Like, how many days? I drew a blank. Within 60 days, we will show you or your clients at least a 5 and upwards of 15% ROI on the purchase of the Sharpen platform, or we'll give you back your money and you can walk away. That's it. No fine print, none of that. So a big part of that is the reason for the webinar with the consultant group was the methodology that we use to go through that, and how we collect metrics from existing platforms, process it, get our benchmarks set up, and then, for 60 days, we're going to make sure that we're showing you the money. And if we don't, then, that's on us, and we'll give it back to you and you can go. I mean, quite honestly, even if we fall short of 5 and we show you 3 again, that's a big deal. So it's really just a matter of making these performance management tools, like the tiles that I was showing you. Those are just a part of our core platform. And in a lot of those, oh yeah, there's the link. Thanks, Rich. In a lot of the bigger platforms out there today, you can get performance management, but it's an add-on, and sometimes the add-on can get pretty pricey. So if you're a giant company and you've got budget room, you can tack that on and fine, okay. But if you're a mid-sized or small company, contact center, like you can't afford that kind of stuff. And so the not having of that performance management flies in the face of our agent first philosophy. So we bake it right in because we feel like it's necessary to provide a good agent experience, which means anybody now can have big company expensive performance tools. Okay, any other questions? Big differentiators, thank yous. Man, you guys are being so kind. This is great.
They're an easygoing group.
Yeah, this is awesome. So I'm not seeing other questions come in. I'm not seeing much coming through in the chat window. I mean, that's kind of it on the Zen philosophy of why we do what we do around Agent First.
Yeah,
Um, and just anecdotally, I'll tell you that it's not smoke for us. It's not marketing. Like there are genuinely upwards of 70 people, mostly back here in Indianapolis, who are all working at home, and we're on Google Hangout calls all the time with each other. Like we really do find this to be important and meaningful. And so it's who our company is. It's not just it's not a slogan. It's not a gimmick. I mean, this is really what we're all about.
perfect. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Murph, and thank you everybody who joined. Hopefully you were able to get something out of today. As I had stated previously, if you guys do have any follow-up questions, by all means, feel free to shoot those our way at partners@sharpencx.com, and we'll do our best to get those addressed. And additionally, as we always kind of sign off and say, if you guys have any opportunities or even customers that could be possible prospects for yourselves that you just want to have a conversation on, give us a shout. We'll line you guys up with the appropriate AE based on where that opportunity is, and have that conversation. So as far as the moment that you've all stuck around for, we know Murph has done a hell of a job. But all that said, in terms of a drawing, our lucky winner today is Mr. Michael Bira. So Mike, we'll be in touch with a gift card for you, and everybody else, be sure to tune in next time for our next riveting conversation. But thanks again for joining. Have a great Thanksgiving week, and have a great close of fiscal year 2020. I know it's been a crazy year, but there's still deals to be won. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.